Hello friends, Tal here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Blood DK here on the Legion Alpha with its brand new build that has added different interactions and talents, moved some stuff around, and in the words of Blizzard, made it a little bit more enjoyable to play. And the reason I kind of held back on the Blood DK was because I knew this build was coming. They had mentioned these changes being brought in a little while ago, and I wanted to wait to actually play with the changes instead of making a video and then having it be invalidated within a week. I do try to bring as much current, up-to-date guides as I possibly can as far as how far the Legion Alpha is progressing. And especially if a major change happens to any of the tanks I've already looked at, which is Vengeance and Druid and now Blood, I'll be making a video just explaining those changes and what I think about them if in the future. But anyways, again, as I do with all these videos, just to, at least for now, as I'm making myself be known, my name is Tal. I am a mythic tank on in Intent on Thrall US. I primarily play a Brewmaster Monk along with an ult of a Prot Paladin. And I basically, the reason I'm making these videos is I feel that I have a point to stand on, maybe to talk, maybe kind of generate a little bit of conversation about the changes that are happening to the tanks, how they're going to be playing Legion, as well as future Legion guides that I plan on making throughout the expansion. And today, again, we're going to be taking a look at Blood as it currently stands here in the Legion Alpha as of April 22nd, 2016. So anytime after that, if the class has changed at any point, maybe this guide will be invalidated. But for right now, as of this 22nd of April of 2016, this is the current state of Blood DK. So primarily, the first thing I want to go ahead and talk about is how it has changed from its current incarnation in Warlords of Draenor. Right now, Blood DK is a powerful tank in Warlords. It honestly is. They have a lot of self-healing. They have a lot of cooldowns for a variety of situations. They have preemptive cooldowns. They have reactive healing. They may bounce up and down a lot, but they have a lot going for them. And up until the point that Breath of Sindragosa was nerfed for Blood, they also had the ability to talent into something that required a lot of thought process, required a lot of maintenance, but gave you amazing results, gave you a very, very powerful damage and healing. This is the biggest thing. It wasn't just damage. In the right situation, Breath of Sindragosa provided outstanding amounts of healing to Blood DKs. And sadly, that was nerfed going into Hellfire Citadel. Now, because of gear inflation and the item level upgrades, you can kind of get back into that point where you're using Breath of Sindragosa again. You can keep it up for a while, not as long as you could before, definitely not indefinitely, definitely not indefinitely. Sorry, but Blood DK. My point is, Blood DK on WoD has a lot of options and is a powerful tank. Now, my issues with it, which may be unpopular with other people, truth of the matter is it's very subjective as to how you feel about the certain classes, and one of the reasons I never could main a Blood DK was I felt that there was a lot of stuff going on at the same time. For example, you could either build for multi-strike or mastery, but you would want both because multi-strike was giving you a lot of health on your death coils. And especially if you had any intention of playing Breath of Sindragosa, which, to be honest, at the highest levels of play, which again is what I try to gear towards, mythic rating, Breath of Sindragosa was the optimal talent. It just was. For the simple reason that it does a bunch of damage, helping your raid out, and it does do a monstrous amount of healing in the right situation. It's honestly for magic damage, and to be fair, almost every single boss encounter has periods of high magic damage. So, my issue with the Blood DK, at least on WoD, is you have this amazing amount of runic regen, and you have this death coil that you have to be spamming. But at the same time, you have to be watching your diseases, because you have Plague Leech, which will grab your diseases off the target, give you 2 runes, then you have to reapply it, so you had Outbreak going on, and you can glyph Outbreak to cost runic power. So you'd be dancing between runes and runic power and making sure that your diseases are up there, but at the same time you're trying to use your Death Strike because you need to heal yourself up, and then Bone Strike is just kind of a fire and forget. you basically had it up for a long time because with your blood shield, you're not actually getting hit, so you're keeping your bone shield charges. Um, and a lot of people say that Brewmaster Monk is like spinning a lot of plates. Honestly, the Blood DK for me, maybe it's just the type of person I am. Maybe I'm just bad at the game, which I doubt, but it could be. I always felt like it was a giant clusterfuck playing my Blood DK. It was fun. He had a lot of moments of fun, but it did feel like a bit of a clusterfuck. Um, and losing out on Heartstrike, of course, wasn't any better, to say the least. If I'm trying to remember right now, on WAD I have basically Blood Boil, Death Strike. I think it's just Blood Strike, but I can't remember for the life of me. Anyways, I'm probably really bad at explaining this, but again, it wasn't a class that I played as much. I played it a little bit more than a Bear Druid, but still, to be fair, not that much. So, how has it changed? They've refocused Blood into a class that basically does two things. It redirects damage, and it has so many different avenues of damage reduction. That's the way they play. They still have the healing component. They still heal for a bunch. So, Death Strike still giving them a blood shield. All that is still there. But it feels like they're really going into more of that vampire sort of draining, redirecting, and just in general, they have a ton of damage reduction. So enough about that. Let's go ahead and get into the actual spells instead of me just talking and talking and talking. So baseline, you have Anti-Magic Shell, 1 minute cooldown. It does what it does today. It absorbs magic damage and it gives you some runic power. It gives you a lot less runic power than it used to. They've done this across the board for DKs. Dark Command is your taunt, still there. Asphyxiate is a stun, a 20-yard range stun, 20-yard range stun, 45-second cooldown, stuns for 5 seconds. Pretty awesome. You don't have that range silence anymore, which kind of sucks, but still a stun. Then you have Death of Decay. Death of Decay costs 1 rune because, of course, all DKs use just runes. There's no more Blood, Frost, and Holy Death. They're all just called runes. And it's a very divisive change. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to like it. I kind of like it. It lets me really just focus in on what I'm actually pressing versus do I have the runes for this? Am I leaving an orphan rune over here? It makes it a little bit easier, admittedly, but it is what it is. It's been changed. Now, Death and Decay is actually interesting because it does its AoE damage. It's on a 15-second cooldown, and every 10 seconds... it lasts for 10 seconds. If you Heart Strike within your Death and Decay, you hit 3 additional targets. Now, the tooltip says we'll hit 3 additional targets, we'll hit all enemies near the target. I don't know if that means it literally hits everything or if it just hits 5 things. There's a couple of inconsistencies with some of the tooltips on the Blood DK as I was playing it today. That kind of make me question what's working, what's not working. But the point of the matter is, you stand in your Death and Decay, you Heart Strike, you hit more targets. Pretty standard. Then you have Blood Boil. Now, something you'll notice here is a new change in this build. Any spell that has green numbers besides their cooldown is basically going to be indicating to you this is reduced by haste. The more haste you have, the lower the cooldown is on this. Blood Boil does AoE damage and infects all targets with your one disease called Blood Plague. It just does damage. That's all it does. Now it says shadowy disease that drains health from the target. There's another talent in the Blood DK talent tree that also says drains and doesn't specifically say heals you, but when I was testing it out and using it, it was healing you. Does this mean Blood Plague is draining health from the enemy and giving it to you? I think so. Or at least I think that may be the intention. But when I was playing, it did not feel like that was actually happening. Whether that's supposed to happen or it's not supposed to happen, I don't know. Still tuning that needs to be done. There's obviously things that need to be changed. But it kind of implies that it heals you, but it might also not heal you. I'm sorry, I don't really have a better answer than that for you. I'd have to go and maybe do a little bit more research. Maybe I'll come back to this and update and see what's going on with that. But you still have Deathgate. Consumption is your artifact ability. What this does is every 45 seconds, you strike all enemies in front of you. It deals a bunch of damage, and it heals you for a bunch. Obviously, if you're hitting a giant group of people, you're going to be healing for a metric shit ton because it's 200% of your damage that you deal. This is the big like, oh shit, I'm taking a bunch of damage, let me heal up. At the same time, if you want to think about, maximizing your DPS as a tank, if you don't necessarily need a big heal in the next 45 seconds and you're sure that you don't, you could just kind of use this sort of on cooldown just to do damage. I probably wouldn't, just because it is such a massive amount of healing. As I was doing the dungeon runs and leveling up, and just pulling up everything, because leveling as a tank is a bit of a pain, it saves your life. It really does. It's monstrous, especially when you combine it with vampiric blood, and I'll get to that in just a second. Death Grip is still here, 15 seconds. You taunt something, you pull it, as it is now. Control Undead, still here, just flavor. Death Strike is your active mitigation. It has changed from costing runes to costing 40 runic power. It's going to do some damage, heal you for 30% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds, or a minimum of 7% of your maximum health. It doesn't feel super strong unless you really are getting smacked really hard in the face for the last 5 seconds. So I've had times where this has just saved me because I've taken so much damage and I just healed almost all of it back up. But it's definitely a case where if you're not taking a lot of damage, you kind of use it and it doesn't really heal for that much. Now your mastery still exists, and this is the new stat pane, by the way, that also changed here. Your mastery is still giving you that absorb shield when you use Death Strike, so it's not like it's wasted. But for whatever reason, it does feel a little bit weaker than it used to. But of course, you have consumption. And they're returning back to the model of taking damage increases the amount of Death Strike healing you're going to be receiving. So that's there. Then you have Dancing Rune Weapon. Still just increases your parry and does, copies your melee attacks. I honestly am tired of Dancing Rune Weapon. I wish they would give it some other functionality versus just giving you parry. At the moment, it kind of feels like you just use it on cooldown or use it specifically for the parry, which, I mean, is okay, but it's never going to save your life. I hate Death's Crest. I hate this ability. I understand why it exists. I understand that some situations it probably be useful. I just think it's dumb. 30-yard range, 1 rune. You reach out, do some shadow damage, and apply Blood Plague. Blood Boil applies your Blood Plague to everything, does more damage, is on a charge system, and costs no runes. This exists for 2 reasons. One is so that you have a single ranged attack that isn't Death Strike, and 2, because of a talent later on in the tree, and I think that's not enough of a reason to have Death's Crest. Personally, yes, it's a ranged attack, so that's still useful. But hey, we could have also had, Death Coil, which I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think they need to re-add Death Coil. We'll get to that though. Gorfien's Grasp. You are one of only 2 specs in the entire game that has Gorfien's Grasp. The other of which is the Vengeance Demon Hunter. It's on a 3-minute cooldown. You pull everything in as it stands now. Fantastic, fantastic cooldown. Rune Forging. There are 3 Rune Forges as a Blood DK as of right now. Razor Ice, which you would never take because you don't do frost damage. Fallen Crusader, which heals you for 6% of your health and gives you a total increase of strength by 25%. And then Stone Skin Gargoyle, which increases your armor by 4%, all stats by 3%. I'm not sure which of these is the best, if I'm totally honest, and I hope you guys don't hate me, but when I was doing my dungeon running and testing, I completely forgot to Rune Forge my weapon because I'm definitely a DK player. Anyways, Heart Strike. Heart Strike is back. It costs 1 rune. It strikes the target and a nearby enemy target, does some damage, snares them, and generates 5 bonus runic power. My understanding is every single rune will generate you 10 runic power. This very specifically states bonus. So if you want the most runic power possible, you use Heart Strike. That's what you do. Then you have Vampiric Blood. It is a 1.5 minute cooldown, and this is your shield wall. You increase your maximum health by, it's not by 45% baseline. This is being increased by an artifact. This artifact trait increases the maximum health and the healing that you receive, but I believe baseline it's about 35%. It's about 30 and 30, I think. I want to say. As you can see, just the fact that it increases your maximum health by 45% and increases all healing you receive by 60%, you're going from 2130k to 30, 88k. It's a massive increase. And the fact that you're using Death Strike constantly, you have all these other little damage reduction and little healing things, it's crazy powerful. And this is your shield wall. This is your big dick cooldown that you want to have. And it's on a very short cooldown because, of course, you don't have Icebound Fortitude anymore, and DKs are all about having the mini cooldowns, although that has been pared back now. It's very powerful, very cool. The numbers are a little bit different. You're not going to get that off the bat. That's with an artifact trait, and we'll go ahead and look at that artifact trait in a bit. But it's a little bit weaker than this, but it's still amazing. Then you have Marrowrend. This is the other side of your active mitigation. This costs 2 runes. You smash the target, and you generate 3 charges of Bone Shield. Bone Shield reduces all damage you take by 20% and increases your haste by 10%. Each damaging attack consumes a charge. It lasts 30 seconds or until all charges are consumed. I will note, I'm not entirely sure how this is supposed to work because when I was doing my testing, 2 things stuck out to me. 3 things, sorry. First, it almost felt like sometimes I would be getting hit and I wouldn't lose a charge of Bone Shield. And I would literally stand in front of things and not cast my Death Strike, so I didn't have a shield, absorb shield, anything like that. I would just stand there and see if it would take my Bone Shield away, and it wouldn't. And other times it would. Maybe Bone Shield's not working correctly. Of course, alpha is alpha. But maybe there's some sort of interaction that needs to be fixed. Number 2, when I had 10 stacks of Bone Shield, I was reducing all damage I took by 200%. In the tooltip. When I was doing a dungeon and I had it at 10 stacks, I was still taking damage. Now, in my opinion, it makes sense that it would just reduce your damage you take by 20% just having it up. I don't think it's meant to stack so that if you have 3 charges, you have like 60% damage reduction, then you get hit once and it's like 40% damage reduction. I don't think it's meant to work like that because, frankly, that would be stupidly overpowered. Keeping it at 10 stacks is not that difficult, and if you're reducing all damage you take by 200%, what? No, it's not. I'm sure it's not meant to work like that. I'm sure that's a tooltip error. And just to prove it, I just want to go over here and smack this because I do think it's important to show. Okay, see, damage taken reduced by 200%, but then you see it's also increasing my haste by 100%. I go over to haste, and nothing's really going on in there. So that's the other side of Marrowrend. It's going to increase your haste by 10%. But I go over here, let's look at the character plane. We have 13% haste. We're going to wait for this to finish ticking. Now again, this says 200% damage reduced and haste increased by 100%. And we go to there and we have 2% haste. So it was increasing our haste by 10%. I believe. Let me run back here and hit it again. I need to get closer. Yeah. So about 10%. So yeah, I believe this is just bugged. It would make sense that it's just increasing your haste and damage reduction by that flat amount, not that it stacks. If it stacks, and that's what they intend, I think Blizzard's going to get a lot of angry forum posts, maybe some strongly worded letters, but I don't believe that's the intended usage of Marrowrend. I believe it's supposed to be, you keep this up because it reduces the damage you take passively and it increases your haste. So that's supposed to be the way it works, I believe. You have Wraithwalk, which is your movement speed ability. It's on a 1-minute cooldown. You get a 30% movement speed. You basically shrug off all roots and movement impairing effects. It has a pretty cool animation. If you ever play Heroes of the Storm, it's like Leoric's Wraithwalk. And then you can hit out of it to stop the channel. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's something DKs have needed for a long time. Is it enough? I don't think so. Not in a world of Vengeance, Demon Hunters, and Monks, and to an extent Warriors. But then again, Druids don't have that much movement, and I mean, at least they have a charge. They have something now. So good that that's been added. Is it enough? Is it something that I feel good using? In the world of Vengeance, Demon Hunters, and Brewmaster Monks, I love those two more for their movement. But again, that's not the point of a DK. You still have your interrupt, 15-second cooldown, 15-yard range. Crimson Scourge is a passive that when you hit targets of Blood Plague, you have a chance to make your next death and decay cost no runes and reset its cooldown. This is basically the reason why you have Blood Plague up at all times. The amount of damage it does isn't much, And if it is healing you, that's pretty cool. I don't know if it was actually working out or not. And in fact, we can just check here. We're gonna hit that. We're gonna blood boil. Yeah, so it does heal you. So blood boil basically just heals you. So you keep it up. All the targets that you have it up on is going to be healing you, and it's also going to be making death and decay cost no runes to reset its cooldown. That basically is something that makes you keep death and decay up 20, no, I was about to say 24 hours, no, almost 100% of the time. In general, there's going to be another talent that I'm going to talk about that's going to encourage you to keep your death and decay down all the time, but essentially you want to have it down all the time. Even, honestly, in my opinion, even if you have to spend the rune, it's still worth it. Generally, you're going to hope that you never spend a rune on it, but I think that even if you do have to spend a rune, it's probably going to be worth it. But it's pretty awesome. It keeps you there. Path of Frost still exists. Water Walk. Raise Ally still exists. Combat Res. Your mastery, of course, is the Blood Shield, Pale Horse, mount speed by 20%, all good. And then Veteran of the Third War, stamina by 25%, armor by 15. So, baseline, you have a pretty pared down thing. You don't have all these crazy cooldowns anymore. You don't have Rune Tap, Icebound Fortitude, all those things baseline. But Vampiric Blood is your monstrously powerful short cooldown shield wall that does not reduce damage. Okay, it's specifically increasing your health and healing that you take. Dancing Room Weapon that gives you a parry buff, and then Anti-Magic Shell which absorbs magic damage. The point is, you use Marrow Rend to keep up Bone Shield. As you're doing that, you're Heart Striking because you want the runic power to use Death Strike. You Blood Boil to keep up your Blood Plague as well as do a bunch of AoE damage. It has no cost, so use it in between runes. And then Consumption when you need that big, massive healing at a moment's notice. And Death's Caress if you have something all the way over there and you want to say fuck you to it. I hate this ability, again. And you try to keep Death and Decay down as much as possible. That is baseline what you do. So now we're going to get into talents. So, the first tier is Bloodworms, which your auto-attack critical strikes have a chance to summon a Bloodworm. They deal a little bit of damage. They burst, healing you for 20% of your missing health. But if you drop below 50% health, your Bloodworms immediately burst and heal you. I think this is pretty cool. They spawn decently frequently, to be completely honest. It's not like it takes too long for them to spawn or anything like that. It does encourage crit, which a lot of things seem to encourage. I would honestly say that, especially because you're having passive haste buffs, and haste only reduces or increases your rune regeneration, I would say that it's looking like Mastery Crit is going to be your desired stats. It's going to be up to the math guys, but it seems to be that's going to be where you want to focus in. And the Bloodworms is a nice passive healing bonus. Now it's strange because the active healing bonus is kind of a shit show. Exsanguinate, costs a rune, 30-yard range, 30-second cooldown, channeled ability that lets you move, parry, and dodge but not auto-attack or use other abilities, and it drains health and heals you. When I was doing my testing, it definitely was I used this when I was about half health. When I was fighting like 3 things, I basically let them beat me down to half health, and I used that, and it was healing me for basically, Skittles. It was just a tiny amount. I almost feel like Blood Plague heals you for more, now that I know that it does heal. It almost feels more useful than Exsanguinate. And you're channeled, so you can't use abilities. You might cap on your runic power, you might get runes that need to be used. My issue with this is it feels like Bloodworms is more useful healing than Exsanguinate, and this is an active ability. Passives should be easy to not have to worry about because they're passive, but do less healing than something that you use on demand that costs your resources, that costs mental thought process. But it doesn't seem like that works out like that. Then you have Heartbreaker. Heart Strike generates 2 additional runic power per target hit. AoE tanking. So much runic power. It feels so good. When you're fighting 1 or 2 things, your runic regeneration, your runic power generation is kind of shit. If I'm being totally honest, it's passable, it's enough, but it doesn't feel great. Tanking a bunch of stuff feels so good when you have this talent. I honestly think they either need to buff this or change it, or you're going to be sticking to Bloodworms or Heartbreaker, depending on if you're tanking a bunch of things and want more runic power, or if you just need that passive healing. Your next tier is Rapid Decomposition. Your Death and Decay deals damage more frequently, and when you stand in it, you generate 20% more runic power. This is what I ended up defaulting to, because it was giving me so much runic power generation, and I was personally a big fan of it. Give me just 1 second here. Sorry, almost dropped my mouse. So I was using this because it gives you a lot of runic power generation. It makes your Heartstrike do even more runic power, all your abilities, and because you have that passive Crimson Scourge keeping Death and Decay up, you basically have it down all the time. It's great. I like it. Next is Soul Gorge. I don't like this talent. I understand what they're doing, but I think the passive is what ruins Soul Gorge. So, it consumes all your blood plagues within 30 yards. It does damage and empowers you for up to 24 seconds with up to 15% rune regeneration per plague. Plagues closer to expiration grant more rune regeneration. Passively, Blood Boil no longer applies blood plague. So what does this mean? This means you want to throw your blood plague onto a bunch of targets, and as they're ticking down, you want to Soul Gorge to consume them and give yourself a bunch of rune regeneration. My issue with this, because honestly at the outset, like ignore the passive, and at the outset this is a fantastic ability in my opinion, because it puts thought process into things. It is put your plague on everything, keep track of it, and just when it's about to run out, use Soul Gorge, consume it, have a bunch of rune regeneration, pop Blood Boil, put it out again. I think that's fantastic. That's way better than having to rely on Death and Decay. If you're able to manage it, it sounds great. But then Blood Boil no longer applies Blood Plague. That's where it kind of kills it. Because the whole point of Blood Boil is it applies it to everyone. And I can see how it'd be a problem. If you're trying to get the maximum bang for your buck, you want to let your diseases tick down. So if you're using Blood Boil constantly, it's going to reapply, it's going to mess you up. But the issue is then you only have Death's Caress. That's the only way to apply it. And that means you have to literally click on every single thing and apply it. You don't have, what's it called? The ability that used to spread the diseases. You don't have that anymore. I can't for the life of me remember what the name of that was. So the reason I don't like this is you have to spread Death's Caress to every single target and then use Soul Gorge, and at the same time you're trying to keep your Merrowwind, you're trying to keep your Heartstrike going so you can have enough runic power to use your abilities, use Death Strike. That's the reason why I'm kind of not a big fan of this. The passive screws it over, and I think they need to either add another way to spread your diseases, or they need to rethink this. Now, I need just a second, because obviously, if you're not obviously, because I actually have a graphic covering it. The server is going to reset in about 40 seconds, so if you guys bear with me for just a moment, I will go ahead and skip this ahead to the next point when it comes back. So there's going to be a bit of a skip, and we'll keep going through this. But again, just to reiterate, Soul Gorge, that's why I'm not a huge fan of it. See you guys in a little bit. We're back again. Sorry about that. The server was resetting. It's actually the next day. I wasn't able to pull myself away from real life to go ahead and finish making this. But anyways, what I was talking about right before we were rudely interrupted by the server resetting, because of course Blizzard, you should be waiting for me, this super important person, to finish what he's doing, right? Because I matter. Anyways, so Soul Gorge, and my end thoughts on it is, I see what they're doing. I see that there's an element of timing with your runes and the debuff on the disease and all that kind of stuff. I don't like it. Maybe I don't like the fact that you then don't have a way to spread your diseases besides using Death's Caress, and honestly your runes are better spent on other things. And the rune regen, I've tried it, and it's actually, I mean, it's there, but it's a lot of setup, and I don't see it there being much of a real use for it when you're tanking. The other talent on this tier is Spectral Deflection. Attacks that deal more than 25% of your maximum health will consume a second Bone Shield charge to further reduce the damage. This will be great for bosses that hit really, really hard, especially if you're under geared and you're doing Mythic raiding. I can see a good use for that. But for the most part, I really am a fan of rapid decomposition because you're using your Death and Decay so often. You stand in it, you generate more runes, it does more damage. Big fan of that, but I can also see an argument for Spectral Deflection. Now the next tier is Ossuary. When you have at least 5 Bone Shield charges, the cost of Death Strike is reduced by 5 runic power, and you can hold a maximum of 10 more runic power. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's pretty boring, honestly. I'm not a huge fan. I mean, 5 less runic power on your Death Strike is, I guess, can stack up, but I mean, I don't care for it personally. Then you have Blood Tap, which is significantly worse than its current incarnation in Warlords of Draenor. This has a 1-minute cooldown. Let me check here just to be absolutely sure. It has 2 charges, yep, assume so. And it's going to basically give you 1 free rune. And every single second, or every single time a bone charge is consumed, it reduces the cooldown by 1 second. I mean, it's nice to just have an on-demand rune, sure. Especially because of some of the other talents, they actually do cost a rune and they become damage reduction, active mitigation that you could use. I'm just not a huge fan of it overall, though. I don't like this version of the Blood Tap. I think it could be better. And my favorite on this tier is actually Anti-Magic Barrier. Anti-Magic Shell also increases your maximum health by 25% for 10 seconds. That's huge. That's a bunch of free health that you just get when you use Anti-Magic Shell. It's 10 seconds long, so it's a separate buff that actually exists on your character regardless of whether you have Anti-Magic Shell, if it fully absorbs the magic or not. So if you see here, you actually get 2 different things, Anti-Magic Shell and then the barrier. The barrier will persist even if this is absorbed. I love this. It gives your Anti-Magic Shell not necessarily a melee, or a physical damage reduction, but it doesn't make it completely useless on a boss that only smacks you in the face really hard. That's why I like it personally. The next tier you have Mark of Blood, which is 15 yard rage, 30 runic power, so it's possibly the only other thing besides Bone Storm that uses runic power that isn't Death Strike. So keep that in mind. You have almost no runic power uses unless you talent into them. And what this does is it puts a Mark of Blood on an enemy target. It enemies damaging auto attacks. So when your enemy that has the Mark of Blood auto attacks something, that something gets healed for 2% of the maximum health. Usually that something is you, or your co-tank, or the poor unlucky hunter that pulled the boss and got murdered within 2 seconds, or the poor rogue that's the only character in range of a magical debuff that the boss is doing because he has Cloak of Shadows and everyone else ran away. But anyways, it'll heal them for 2% of the max health. I guess that's good. It's not... Like, you're not going to want to try to keep up a bunch of these Marks of Blood because, again, you do need the Death Strike healing. As much as Death Strike, again, is... The healing is kind of pitiful. Let's get that out of the way. Like, unless you're taking big damage, the healing from Death Strike kind of really sucks. It feels bad. You never want to feel bad when using an ability like that, but honestly, it feels bad. So I'm not sure if Mark for Blood needs revision, needs a little bit of a buff. Maybe it needs a different place. Maybe a couple of charges like Blood Boil that don't have a cost. I'm not sure, but it's interesting because, again, there's that whole healing and redirection. Then you have Red Thirst. Spending runic power will decrease the remaining cooldown of vampiric blood by 2 seconds per 10 runic power. I feel like this is almost overpowered. Vampiric blood already has a very low cooldown, and it is a monstrously powerful cooldown. Okay, so let me say that a different way. It has a 1.5 minute cooldown, so it doesn't take long to get it back. And the strength of it is so powerful that it's a big lifesaver, especially because everything is healing you. When you're using Death Strike and it's costing 40 runic power, that's going to be reducing, every single Death Strike is going to reduce it by 8 seconds. Or no, yeah, by 8 seconds, because 4 times 2 is 8. Yes, I can do math. Basic math, only basic math. But 8 seconds. And if you're getting into a high rune regeneration situation, like you have your Death and Decay down, your heart striking like crazy, you have your Bone Shield up already, so you have that increased haste. I mean, it can add up, and I've felt like Vampiric Blood almost has like a 35 second cooldown when I'm in big AoE packs and I just need it. It makes you use Vampiric Blood much more often, which just makes you more powerful because again, it's stupidly strong. I love this talent. Whether it will math out to be the best or not, that's to be determined. But it does have some competition in the form of Tombstone. Now, Tombstone is a 1 minute cooldown. It'll consume all your Bone Shield charges, and for each charge consumed, you gain 3 runic power and absorb damage equal to 3% of your maximum health. What does this mean? If you have 10 stacks of Bone Shield, you're going to gain 30 runic power, which is a little bit shy of the 40 you need for Death Strike. But it's also going to give you an you're going to be able to absorb damage up to 30% of your maximum health for 8 seconds. So, just to kind of show that. We're get our Bone Shield up. We need just a little bit more. Come on, come on. I want the big 10. Right? Boom, we use it. We're absorbing almost 800,000 damage. So you absorb 30% of your health. What does that mean? That means that's something that you pull for a big attack. That means Archimonde's about to smack you with the Death Caller ad. Boom, you pop that, you absorb a shit ton of your health, and it's your maximum health. What does Vampiric Blood do? It increases your maximum health. What does Anti-Magic Shell do? It can increase your maximum health. So all of a sudden, so that was an 800k shield, right? Right? Okay, we're gonna remember that. 800k. Okay, he's being burned apparently. So we're gonna stack that back up again. So we have our 10 Bone Shield charges, and then we're going to do, soon as it comes off cooldown, we're going to Vampiric Blood, Anti-Magic Shell, Tombstone. Oh, okay, we'll just absorb shy of 150. I'm not good at math. 1412188. That's over 1 million damage, I think. 14128. Yeah, it's about 1,400,000 damage. That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Anti-Magic Shell doesn't have a long cooldown. It's the same as Tombstone. If you combine those two talents, you can literally just use those together all the time, or separately if you need smoothing damage, not combined it. And then Vampiric Blood's going to be reducing when you're using your runic power anyway, so it's not going to have that 50 second cooldown. By now it'll probably be right about 25 seconds. That's stupid synergy, and it's so... Oh, no. Let me correct myself. Everything I just said was wrong. Because you have to choose between reducing the cooldown of Vampiric Blood or having Tombstone. So what does that mean? It is a good choice because you're choosing between having more constant, always powerful Vampiric Blood, which just increases your health and just increases the healing, versus damage reduction. I like this. I like this choice between the two of these. Tombstone, maybe you won't always get the 10 Bone Shield charge because, of course, melee attack will take it off you. But I like this ability to pull for a very specific ability, very specific event, pop it, give yourself a giant absorb shield. It's a good choice. I like this tier a lot. For just everyday random stuff, probably Red Thirst. I think Mark for Blood either needs to change or it needs a little bit of a buff, or maybe I'm not seeing the right situation for it. Maybe when you're off tanking, to give your tank buddy a little bit of a healing buff. But I like the choice between Tombstone and Red Thirst. It's going to depend on the situation, and it's just a tool that you have in your utility belt for tanking. Now next you have Tightening Grasp. Reduces the cooldown of Gorfian's Grasp by 60 seconds, and your Death and Decay also reduces the movement speed of enemies within its radius by 70%. This is going to depend very much on the raid encounter. If you needed Gorfian's Grasp things, then you're going to take this. It's kind of out of your control, which does suck. The truth of the matter is you're one of 2 specs in the entire goddamn game that have this. So if your raid team needs it, you better believe you're going to be taking the cooldown reduction. You just are. It sucks because there's not much of a choice, but that also lends itself to just how powerful Mass Grip is, and maybe how they should think about giving it to other classes, maybe. Little bit of a strong non-choice there. But then you have Tremble before me. Enemies damaged by your Death and Decay have a chance to cower in place for 3 seconds, cannot suffer from it more than every 10 seconds, and damage can cancel the effect. I've seen this be really useful in dungeons. It got nerfed a little bit because it can't be affected by more than once every 10 seconds. But I mean, just stopping a pack of enemies from casting or melee attacking, it could be pretty good in dungeons. But then you have March of the Dam, which just increases Wraithwalk's duration by 50%, and it just breaks all effects that are on you. So for solo play, doing random stuff, I like this. For dungeons, this will probably be useful. But then again, every team, taking a minute off of that on dungeons will probably be good too. It's going to depend on the situation. For the most part, this is probably what you're going to have to take in group settings, and you can choose between these two in solo settings. It sucks a little bit, but again, it lends itself to the power of Mass Grip. Next here you have is Will and Necropolis. Reduce all damage taken by 20% while your health is below 35%, or from any attack that will reduce you below 35%. My problem with this is in the past this existed and it would give you a free usage of Rune Tap, which I believe in the past was just like a 10% heal, if I remember that correctly. It had a place then. Honestly, in my opinion, if you're that low on health, unless it's literally a mechanic of the fight, like Tyrant Velhari, may it never happen again. But if that's the mechanic of a fight, sure, you'll take that. If not, being below 35% health, you're probably just gonna die. Just straight up, you'll probably just die. If you've already used consumption, if you use vampiric blood, your anti-magic shell is on cooldown, you're desperately trying to keep yourself alive, this isn't really going to help. At that point, you're in the mercy of your healers. Or you could take Rune Tap and just completely not get to that point. Rune Tap. 1 rune, 25-second recharge, consume a rune to reduce all damage taken by 25% for 3 seconds. What? This has 2 charges. So many charge things on the DK, by the way. But that's amazing. You can pair that up with Blood Tap, and as much as maybe I don't like that talent as much as something like Anti-Magic Barrier, there's definitely an argument to be made for reducing damage rather than just soaking it. Reducing the damage is almost always better than just soaking it up. And, I mean, you reduce all damage taken by 25% for 3 seconds. I mean, it speaks for itself. You're going to want to use this on big specific abilities. You're going to say, hey, maybe I don't have a blood shield up. Let me, Manaroff's about to poke me in the face. Boom, pop that, protect yourself. It's pretty good. I can't really, it's hard to argue against the decency of that. And that also encourages you to maybe save a rune always. Instead of going through your full rotation, maybe you'll do Marrow Rend, Heart Strike, and then as it comes back, start doing maybe 1 Marrow Rend and just multiple Heart Strikes so you can keep your rune regen up. And just always save a rune for Rune Tap for that moment when, okay, big boss ability, pop, you're good to go. And you have charges, so you don't have to necessarily... You can have 2 of them and keep it up for 6 seconds and not, get hit in the face. And just to make sure, I want to make sure it doesn't stack or anything. But, yeah, see, it does not go to 6 seconds. Keep that in mind. It just resets it to 3. So you don't want to spam them after each other. I like Rune Tap. It's going to be one of those things where depending on the fight, and as a tank you should know what the fight entails, you're going to want it for specific situations. And then you have Foul Bulwark, which each charge of Bone Shield increases your maximum health by 3%, which again just goes back into that maximum health thing. You have this, you have Tombstone, Anti-Magic Barrier, Foul Bulwark. Your maximum health is already super crazy high. You pop that Tombstone, it's just stupid. It's the new guard on a 1-minute cooldown, essentially. The only problem with that is, of course, you do lose your Bone Shield, so you might want to make sure that you have enough rooms to hit Marrow Rend again, just so you're minimizing the amount of time that you don't have Bone Shield up. But I like Foul Bulwark again as well. I like both of these choices rather than Will and Necropolis. This is probably only going to be a situation where the fight demands something like this. Other than that, you're going to want to take the active mitigation that is Rune Tap. I don't actually know if it classifies as active mitigation, which if Blizzard continues with their kill rogs or their mana offs, that a specific ability, if you don't have active mitigation up on your character, then it does a very nasty debuff or dot on you. I don't know if it actually count for that, but I like having this choice between a passive and an active way of reducing more damage taken, which is everything. I feel the Blood DK has lost a bit of the self-healing and gained a shit ton of the damage reduction right before something happens. It's going to encourage a playstyle where you know what's going to happen and you actively or proactively react to it instead of reactionary things where you wait for it to happen, then you do something and hope you'd live. And then you have the last tier, which um, I'm not a huge fan of. So Bone Storm costs between 10 to 100 runic power. It's on a 1 minute cooldown. It does a bunch of damage, and it heals you for 1% of your maximum health every time it deals damage. And it lasts 1 second per 10 runic power spent. If you spend 100 runic power, it lasts for 10 seconds. If there's 10 enemies around you and it lasts and hits them for 10 seconds each, you'll regen your entire health bar. If there's less enemies, you regen less. I don't like this because of the fact that the healing is pretty shit, and it doesn't really feel like, even if you had a I thinking back right now, any ad fight, if you're doing multiple targets, like, you're never going to be fighting like 20 things at once. Let's be for real. Like, things are if there's 20 of something, it'll die quickly. If there's not 20 of something, it'll be like 3 or 4 or 5 of something. You know, even if you get five hits, 10 seconds each, so 50 hits, so 50% of your max health, like, that sounds like a lot, but it's very slow. It's not instant. It's not a big boost up. It's a very small, gradual thing. If anything gets pulled out or dies before, oh great, now you just waste a little bit of runic. And that's the other thing. You're wasting your runic power. This does not give you blood shield, okay, which is an important part of your kit. So it's an AoE talent, sure, but it's not a feels good AoE talent, if that makes any sense. I'm not a fan. Not a fan of Bone Storm, personally. It could do with some revision. And if they want to do the whole 10 to 100 runic power, hey, maybe give them the whole Breath of Sindragosa treatment where it drains your runic power over time, but if you play well, you can be encouraged to keep it up for a long time. I mean, let's be for real. DK's like that. That's a really cool thing that they have. Play your rotation right, take advantage of the encounter, anti-magic shell, runic power soak, all that kind of stuff, and you get to hold up this buff for a while, and it does a lot of really cool stuff for you. I think they should change that a little bit. Then you have Blood Mirror, which is a 2-minute cooldown, and it is essentially, it doesn't say it, but it's basically a 20% damage reduction on you. You afflict an enemy with Blood Mirror for 10 seconds, and 20% of any damage that target deals to you is redirected to the target. Or no, sorry, that is incorrect. 20% of all damage that is dealt to you, just anything that's dealt to you, 20% of it is redirected to the target. Potentially, there could be situations where maybe this doesn't always work on all abilities, but at the same time, it's on the same tier as Purgatory, which is just as it is in WoD. It's the same exact thing. Instead of dying, you get a absorb healing thing on you. It needs to be healed off, or you die. It can happen every 3 minutes. So you can't combo this. You can't have Purgatory and then go stand in some 2 bajillion damage thing and redirect 200 million into the boss or some stupid thing like that. But still, I mean, it's a nice cooldown. Just 20% damage, boom, redirected to the boss. It'll give you a little bit of a DPS option, and at the same time, it's just a cooldown. It's pretty nice. I like that it's not just you take less damage. It's the boss gets hit for 20% of the damage he does to me because fuck him. That's why I like that. I like that redirection of it. It's not boring. It's a little more fun, and I mean, shit, you can even use it to kill priority targets. Like, let's say the boss is about to hit you with the 5th stack of the tank change thing out, and this is going to bring you to like 10% of your health, but it's fine because your co-tank's in the tank right after, so you don't have to worry about immediately dying. But oh shit, fucking fuckface McGee over there is eating up the mages or whatever the fuck he's doing because he doesn't target tanks and he can't be tanked. He has to be burned down. You put Blood Mirror on him. You take the big hit from the boss. That son of a bitch dies. You're no longer tanking. You don't need the 20% damage reduction. And it's just an option. It's another really cool, fun thing that you can do, and you can have an option to do things depending on the fight and depending on the situation. So I'm a fan of Blood Mirror personally. Bone Storm needs a little bit of a revision, but I feel like I could do good. But I'm personally a fan of Blood Mirror. So we've gone through all the talents. We've gone through all the spells. Let's go through your artifact, the Maw of the Damned. Now, of course, Consumption, 45-second cooldown. This feels like the real Death Strike, which is maybe a little controversial to say, but this will heal you for a lot. It just does a bunch of damage. It's like a big old cleave. And let's look at some of the traits now. So we're going to look at all the minor ones and the big old ones. So, increases physical damage done by 8%. Boring. Increases stamina by 10%. more of that health stacking. Increases the duration of Dancing Rune Weapon. Dancing Rune Weapon is kind of I wish they would change it, honestly. It's no longer. It's kind of cool to see it floating around, but it's not that great, really. Blood Feast. Heart Strike heals you for 25% of the damage it deals. Does that mean that Heartbreaker, along or not Heartbreaker, but the interaction with Death and Decay, that it's going to heal you for hitting all the targets in the range? I believe so. It's definitely something that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Maybe if you know you're about to use a bunch of Heart Strikers, if you're kind of low, you can sort of get healed for it. It's only 25%, so it's not like it's going to be saving your life anytime soon, but it has potential there. Then you have increases the damage done by Heart Strike by 30%, which obviously leads into this one, which is great. Iron Heart increases your armor by 10%. Okay. Vampiric Fangs increases maximum hit points granted by blood. Vampiric Blood by an additional 15%. Increases healing received by an additional 30%. So, again, Vampiric Blood baseline is only going to be doing 30% health and 30% healing. And with this, it increases to 45% health and 60% healing. Then you have increases your parry chance by 3%. Then, I can't say that word, but increases the damage done to your blood plague by 30%, which again is draining health and healing you. It's a very minor thing. It's like a little hot you give yourself. But then, Marrow Rend has a 30% chance to generate an additional charge of Bone Shield. So usually it'll give you like 3, but you have a chance of getting 4. It's kind of nice. It's definitely something you want to keep an eye on because you don't want to go over your Bone Shield charges. Don't want to waste. But it's a nice little bonus. Increases the damage done by Marrow Rend by 15%. Okay. Dancing Rune Weapon summons a second copy of Maw of the Dam. Okay, 2 Dancing Rune Weapons. Sure. You can still apply multiple debuffs. You could probably have 3 diseases up at that target at the same time if you do that. Other than that, I don't really see anything else being too crazy with that combination. Then you have increases damage done by Death and Decay. You already know you're pretty much keeping this on cooldown, especially if you take the talent that gives you the rune regeneration. But let's look at the big ones now. Skeletal Shattering. Each time Bone Shield absorbs damage, it has a chance equal to your critical strike chance to absorb an additional 15% of the damage. There's a lot of little hooks for crit for DKs, to the point where I'm starting to think that haste is kind of given to you by having your bone shield, your bone charge thing up, and there's a lot of things that increase rune regeneration. That's all haste does really, is increase rune regeneration. Versatility is just that, that boring healing and damage, although it does double dip a little bit since almost everything you do is healing and damage. But it's really starting to come to light, I guess, that mastery and crit are what you want to focus on, because a lot of little things interact with crit to give like the outside things of Blood Shield more benefit, more strength. And you can see that here with this trait. The other trait that you have is, after Vampiric Blood expires, you absorb damage equal to 5 times the damage your Blood Plague dealt during Vampiric Blood. Keep your Blood Plague up all the time. Just fucking do it. You don't have to worry, but it's basically going to give you an Absorb Shield after Vampiric Blood. And then Unending Thirst. While Blood Shield is active, you gain 25% Leech, which again, it's a bit of a double dip because everything you do, all the damage and stuff you do, is also healing you at the same time. Almost everything does. So Leech is another one of those things, just like Versatility, that might be actually really amazing because everything has a heal and damage component at the same time. So, what do I think about all this? Well, there's a lot of interacting mechanics, there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of damage reduction, there's a lot of options for different situations that you want to go ahead and do. I think that's really cool. I'm a fan of a lot of options. There's a lot of mechanical things going on with the Blood Decay that I'm kind of a big fan of. When I was playing it in a dungeon, I had a little bit of a hard time keeping myself alive because of the fact is Death Strike, it doesn't heal for as much as it used to. And I definitely felt that a lot of the artifact traits that I obviously didn't have unlocked at the time were necessary. Just the one that increases your Vampiric Blood is probably going to be the very first one you should go towards because it's stupidly powerful and it's not even a gold trait. I definitely can see how with more artifact traits, it's not just, more damage, more healing or anything. It gives you more of that buffer because, again, DKs are all about going up and down, healing up the damage that they take. And they have a lot of ways to prevent the damage before it comes in so you're not dropping super low and being the bane of every healer's existence. I think that's cool. As far as tools that you have for tanking, I would really only say, I would say that your biggest tool is your ability to spec yourself to reduce whatever the fuck you want. You don't like that ability the boss does, you reduce it by 25%, you put an absorb shield up right before it, you fucking tombstone, blood shield, bone charge, like you have so many things going on at once. You make that ability just tickle you. It's kind of funny if I'm being honest. Like it's going to be really, really good for a person that understands the fight and understands the tools available to him to very specifically reduce certain things. If the healers at this very moment are trying to heal the raid because of some crazy thing that happened and they're ignoring you a little bit, you can save like 2 or 3, 4 different things for that one moment where maybe the healers aren't paying attention on you. And that's very powerful. Having the ability to tell your healers that, okay, you guys have this thing you're worrying about and this ad just spawns and it's on me. Don't worry about me. I'm going to save up things for this exact moment. You guys get the raid settled, and then when you're back towards me, I'll still be alive because I've saved all my stuff for this exact moment. You figure that out, then you help me. That's a very powerful thing. And, Mark of Blood, depending on how it's tuned, I can see this being good, especially for the off tank, or just for kind of throwing it around to different priority ads, so every time they auto attack something, it's healing that victim. It's not going to be enough to out heal the damage that they're doing, but I mean, I guess it could be good. That's the thing. For me, it's really just your tanking tool is Gorfian's Grasp and Death Grip. Gorfian's Grasp, Death Grip, and the fact that you can take care of yourself for a short time, not forever. That's definitely been reduced. Maybe with gear you could take care of yourself forever, but you can take care of yourself, and you have Death Grip and Mass Grip. That is your tanking tools. Maybe not as much as other tanks, maybe not as much, just outright helping everyone else. It seems like DKs are very much about, I help myself stay alive, and by you not having to worry about me is how I help you. Which is very interesting, and it's worked historically for them. As far as offense for defense, there's a little bit of that. At least as far as the first tier, obviously, if you go Heartbreaker, Runic Power is offensive and defensive in nature. There's many different talents that increase the Death and Decay damage, so I like Rapid Decomposition. Soul Gorge, depending on if they change it or not, could be good, could be bad. I don't know. I don't like the way it works personally. But then you have things such as Blood Tap and Rune Tap, reducing more damage. Nothing that really makes you just do more damage. Again, Bone Storm, I don't even think the damage it does is really all that great. I mean, if you see here, that's doing almost 50,000 damage to a physical target, and it hits something else. This does 20 or 17k a second. It's kind of shit. And it doesn't go up in damage from more Rune Power, it just lasts longer. I don't see a way to increase the damage that you do by giving up a little bit of your defensives. But then again, everything that you do kind of leeches, so maybe they're not meant to. Of course, they are vampires. So that's missing from this entire thing. But I mean, I want to go ahead and show off a little bit of combat just to kind of show you. Let me come over here away from all the other spell effects. So essentially, as you come into a fight, you're going to want to put down Death and Decay. Go ahead and put up your Blood Plague. Marrow Rend, Death Strike, use up some of that rune. Heart Strike, Blood Boil since it's off cooldown, Death Strike again, Heart Strike, Death Strike again, Blood Boil, Marrow Rend, keep that up. And it's pretty much the rhythm that you get into. I'm actually surprised I haven't procced the Crimson Scourge to keep the Death Strike going, which kind of sucks, but I mean, it happens. You keep up Blood Plague. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you're always keeping up Blood Plague, making sure that it's never going to drop because it is, there you go, that reset, that's always great. And if you just spam Heart Strike, I mean, that's where you get most of your runic power from. Just keep spamming it. Blood Plague, which does not give you runic power because, of course, it's not costing any runes. And that's basically the way it plays. You just you save consumption for that moment when you really need a big ol' heal. And you use, I actually want to show you this very specifically. Let me go ahead and show you just off the top of my, show you with all full runes. Just, runic power is all saved up, but you just kind of ignore it. Or let me just do that, drop it a little bit. And what I want to show here is the reset for Vampiric Blood. But you can very easily run in, cast that. Blood Plague is up. Marrow Rend, Marrow Rend, Heart Strike, use Vampire Blood, Death Strike, Death Strike, Heart Strike, Heart Strike. Oh, Death Negates free. Heart Strike, Heart Strike, Blood Plague, Death Strike, Heart Strike, Heart Strike, Strike, keep a Blood Plague. And you already see it's already 30 seconds. It's not going super fast, but I mean it's still going down. I mean it's not, you're not sitting at that long cooldown. It's almost back up. It's not going to be up forever. Maybe with more gear you can keep it up almost virtually forever. But look, I can already use Vampiric Blood again, and it's so powerful. This is your shield wall, guys. Shield wall on a lower cooldown than 1 minute. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But I like various things about this. I like the tools that you have. Let's just see. So you have two, or at least it looks like it should be two Maw the Dams there. You have Consumption, Death and Decay, Magic Shell, Blood Mirror. Has that cool little red graphic effect. It's taking the 20% of the damage it does to me. Then you have Wraithwalk, which is, Leoric. It's cool. I like it. Wraithwalk especially is something they've been needing for a long time. So, I mean, that's basically it right there. What do I think about it as far as compared to the other tanks and how its current state is? There's some things I think they need to revise. They need to maybe take a look at. Death's Caress, I think, is dumb. But I almost feel like Death's Caress exists because of Soul Gorge. But maybe they need to redo a little bit of how Soul Gorge works, or give you that. I can't remember for the life of me the name of the ability that used to spread your diseases. It used to be Blood Boil, and then you spread something else that they combined together. I mean, maybe bring that back, give you a way to spread that out, and even then, I mean, maybe it won't matter because just having your bone shields, depending on how strong the boss hits you, having your bone shields just absorb more damage, or just having more runic power. I mean, it's going to depend, but I see here options. I see options for various things. Exsanguinate is the option for when you don't know what you're doing because it's undertuned. But anyways, it's lots of options. It's lots of ways to tailor yourself for a very specific thing. Like the boss is going to, face fuck you every minute. You just use Tombstone, you negate it. And the only cost is you can't use Vampiric Blood as often, but you don't need to have that up all the time. You need it for super big mana explosion, not for the entire fight. I like that about it. There's so many options. Right now, as far as damage goes and tuning and everything, it's a little bit low. Leveling was kind of a giant pain in the ass. I didn't level for too long. It wasn't that much fun. But that's basically, in a nutshell, I like the direction Blood DK is going. I like the different options available to it. I don't like that their rune regeneration is pretty much gone. Like Unholy gets runic corruption. Unholy and Frost gets runic corruption baseline, right? I like that it's not in the talent tier anymore because fuck that. That was always a terrible idea. And I mean, sure, this gives you some rune regeneration, that gives you some rune regeneration, but I wish Blood had its own baseline rune regeneration talent like runic corruption. I feel like that's missing right now. And the only other problem I really have is Death Strike doesn't feel like Death Strike anymore. It feels very, very weak. And I mean, the only other thing is I would say maybe one additional small cooldown that's not tied to talents, because the truth of the matter is that if you've already used Vampiric Blood and you don't have Anti-Magic Barrier because you're taking Blood Tap or anything, you really have to then take Rune Tap because you don't have any other, short cooldown type things. I feel like Rune Tap might honestly just end up being required because it's just that extra little bit to make sure that you're fine. But it's interesting. I like the Blood DK. It's looking very powerful. It definitely is. In the dungeons that I was doing, I was rivaling our healer for heals. Then again, he might have been a bad healer. I don't know. I haven't been messing with add-ons here on the alpha too much. I want to, but at the same time, I tried a little bit earlier and it was kind of messing the game up, and I don't really want to go through that again. I just want to make sure I get these videos out to you without any bugs or errors. But yeah, that's basically what I think about this. Compared to the other tanks, it feels more stable than Vengeance. It feels a little more fun than Bear, but Bear still feels like the super overpowered thing. And I mean, I'm really excited for so far these tanks that I've been looking at, the changes have mostly been positive. They've been very interesting. They have a lot of options. I feel that as far as choices that you can make, it's really between Vengeance and DK that give you multiple different options for multiple different things. Vengeance maybe a little bit more for just doing damage, but as far as surviving, I definitely feel Bear, Blood, and then Vengeance under those. Although I think that Warrior, Brewmaster, and Paladin might be a little bit better than Vengeance. I still have to go through my videos for those. But yeah, I mean, that has been my thoughts here on the Blood DK here on the Legion Alpha. Remember that this is accurate as of the 22nd of April, and if I'm being a little bit honest, 23rd of April, which is today. Um, but if you like this video, if you want to see more of this type of content, please go ahead, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. It helps me out more than you could possibly imagine. It lets me do more things with the channel. I can eventually like have a real URL and change the name of the channel to like Tal the Tank or something nice like that. I'd like to make some channel art, but I'll probably have to go into paint and make some really shitty stuff because I'm a terrible artist, but it's fine. It's whatever. I just like bringing you guys this type of thing. I like talking about this. I like giving my opinion on these different tanks and talking about all of them and different ways that you want to use them in Mythic encounters, and I look forward to doing more of that for you. So my name has been Tal. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you around.